You're listening to the Awesomeness in Action radio show with your host, Rashana Price, the giver of awesomeness.
Welcome to the Awesomeness in Action radio show. I'm your host, Rashana Price, international author, coach, speaker, and trainer, business owner. And this show is brought to you by Erie Success. Erie Success is our corporate sponsor that supports individuals and corporations that are looking to grow. To learn more about Erie Success, go to EYRIEsuccess.com. That's EYRIEsuccess.com. We're also sponsored by Davenport Event Management. Davenport Event Management brings purpose-driven events to life. So if you are thinking about hosting an event, you have an event, but you're looking for a venue, you need consulting services, contact davenporteventmgmt.com. That's davenporteventmgmt.com, or you can call 803-627-8132. 803-627-8132. All right. Thank you to our sponsors, and we're ready to dive into an amazing show. I've taken some time off over the summer. I hope you've enjoyed your summertime. And yes, it's still summer, but it's kind of winding down. My children are going back to school actually next week. And so I want to talk to you about one of the highlights of my summer, which was the 75th Annual SHRM Conference. Now, we're going to break down what SHRM is together. I'm going to talk to you about the highlights, maybe a couple of lowlights. I'm going to share with you my experience around conferences, because over the next couple of shows, I'm going to be talking to you about getting prepared for conferences, what to expect. I'm going to be bringing you a show live from the State of Black Learning Conference as well. So many things to discuss. But today, let's dive deep into the 75th anniversary of SHRM, which is the Society of Human Resource Management Professionals. That is the organization that supports those that are in the function of HR or that are adjacent to. So not everyone is in HR. Some people support hiring practices. They're in the technology space. They are authors themselves. They think about workplace environments, culture, etc. So the SHRM conference was hosted in Las Vegas, one of my favorite cities in the United States, in Las Vegas, Nevada, in mid-June, really the beginning of June, June 10th through the 14th of 2023. So if you're listening to this at a different point in time, and you're like, when was it? It was June 10th through the 14th, 2023. And I was honored to be a speaker in one of the sessions. So there were over 25,000 people that registered and attended the conference. And breakout sessions were anywhere from 100 to about 300, maybe some rooms had 500, but most of the rooms were about a 300 person capacity. That's what my room was. And it was, I guess, sold out is the way to say it, although people didn't buy tickets. It was at full capacity. And when I mean full capacity, they weren't letting anyone else in. I thought people could maybe sit on the floor or sit in the background, but they could only do so much of that for safety reasons, which I respect. It was definitely a highlight of the conference was being a speaker and what that means to be a speaker at a big conference like that, to be able to bring content in a really specific way. And so for all of you speakers out there or those aspiring speakers, the process to become a speaker was actually something that started almost a year before. So I spoke at the North Carolina State Conference for SHRM. And when I went to that conference, people in the audience, they were in my breakout session. It was about a little over 100, maybe 150 people in the room. They were like, this content is good. And we want you to bring this content to the annual conference. So I applied to be a speaker. And that meant I had to upload a little bit of a speaker reel. I had to share where I've spoken before. Of course, my name, my business EIN number, address, social media, that kind of stuff. So all of those things. And then I waited and waited and waited. I waited so long, I actually forgot that I had applied because there were so many other things going on. And then one day I got this amazing email that said that I had been accepted as a speaker and what I could expect next. So even for a conference of that size, all of you that are like, so did you get paid to speak? No, I did not get paid as a speaker for a session. However, they did pay for my travel, my accommodations, and reimbursed me for all of my expenses around food. I had a per diem, which is a per daily rate that I could spend on food, not to exceed $75, which in Vegas goes pretty far, especially when you're at a conference all day. So that was what I got, as well as connections and opportunities to speak to other people who are looking for speakers and consultants, and to get my business's name out there and to be credible. To say that I've spoken at the 75th Anniversary SHRM Annual Conference, big deal. To say that there are others that have reached out to me and said, hey, I would love for you to come speak at my organization and we're negotiating contracts. Absolutely. The goal is for me to also get to the state of Missouri, because their planning committee has said, hey, we really want you to come to Missouri in 2024. So the one thing about being a speaker I will share, and being at big conferences or being invited to speak really anywhere, is think about what you want for this speaking event. I'll say that again. Think about what you want from the speaking event, and then be ready to pour into that and put into that. Meaning for me, I was like, I want to be able to speak at SHRM. 1, I love the organization. 2, I believe in their mission. 3, I've been in HR and I've seen what happens when people have access to great resources and opportunities. I've also seen when that doesn't happen. In addition to that, I wanted to be able to pour back into a community that poured into me when I was in HR. I also wanted to be able to represent the state of North Carolina. And for those that had said, yes, I want you to be there. So there were lots of reasons. It wasn't necessarily, oh, I want to make money right now from it. I am blessed to have a business that is sustainable and that brings in income from a variety of places. So every speaking engagement doesn't have to come with a check. They can come with opportunities for connections that may lead to something more long-term. And so depending on how your business is structured, depending on financially where you are, what you're looking for, I would suggest really thinking about what it is that you desire from any opportunity so that you can be in a position to get that. In addition, SHRM purchased my books. So they purchased 30 of my book, Be a Giver of Awesomeness, that I published. And it went with adult bullying in the theme of that. They had it in the bookstore. People purchased it, but they paid me up front for my book. So that was revenue that I received. And again, I wanted the opportunity to be able to say, I've spoken at the SHRM Annual Conference, that's the level of speaker that I am. And not only did I speak there, but I was good. And if you aren't willing to say that you're good at a thing, then we can talk about that. Feel free to DM me on IG at Giver of Awesomeness, or connect with me on LinkedIn or Facebook as Roshana Price, so that we can talk to you, so I can talk to you about being humble, right? About who you are, but also understanding that there are times when you have to be able to say, yeah, I was good. I delivered. I did what I was supposed to. I like to think about it as I was a professional. I am a professional. And so as a professional, I did my job that day and beyond. I've served the community that's in HR and those that were in my session well. So not only at the conference did I meet amazing people, did I have the opportunity to share a topic that I'm really passionate about, adult bullying in the workplace and the impacts of mental health and how work environments are making people sick. And it's not the individual's fault or their problem. It's really the problem of organizations and leaders that has to be talked about and dealt with and walked back, apologized for, structures in place, etc. I won't go on my soapbox right now, but that's what I talked about. And so because I talked about that, I wanted to be able to share that in this community with HR professionals, with human resource managers, directors, vice presidents. For some people, they're the chief in HR, and they were in the room. And while they were in the room, I wasn't talking to them about what they can do to make their organization better. I was actually talking about them individually, what's happened in their own professional careers. Perhaps they themselves have encountered a bully. And for some, it was acknowledging, I think I've been the bully. And what do I do now, Roshana? That was actually a question that I received in my inbox afterwards. So I gave everyone an opportunity to connect with me offline, to send me an email, to have a follow-up session. And people did. They wanted to know. They were curious. And that is leadership, in my opinion, when someone can say, oh my goodness, I didn't know that this was a thing. And now that it's a thing, before I go and reflect on what everybody else isn't doing, the first reflection is on self, on me. I think this is happening to me or has happened to me, or, oh my goodness, I think I'm doing this. And how do I stop? How do I get better? This is why it's so important to go to conferences and sit in the seat for yourself versus going to conferences and sitting in the seat for someone else, which is what I'm going to talk about in just a little bit. But before I do, I want to give you some more highlights of the SHRM conference. Again, we were in Vegas. I stayed at the Palazzo. Second highlight, staying at the Palazzo, one of my favorite places to stay. And I know I said Vegas is one of my favorite cities. And so within my favorite city, you now know my favorite place is the Palazzo. It is tied to the Venetian. So the Venetian is one of the main big casino resorts that is in Vegas. It's right on the Strip. And the Venetian has a second tower called the Palazzo. And I stayed at the Palazzo celebrating my 40th birthday with my husband when he surprised me for a trip a week after I turned 40. And then I stayed there again when I was a speaker with the SHRM conference, and the Palazzo was one of the hotels I could stay at. So I did. Loved it. Had a great time. What I love most about the Palazzo is that they have suites. So you can go with a family of 4, as I have, maybe even 6 people, especially if you get 2 queens. And then they also have a sectional couch that pulls out. There's stairs that walk down. It's a pretty big bathroom. There's 2 TVs in the room if you're going to spend a lot of time in the room. But there's opportunities for you to stay in a really nice place and do what you want to do while you're in Vegas. And it's in the middle end part of the Strip. So you're close enough to attractions and other places, and you don't have to, you're going to walk a lot in Vegas. So let me say that. You're going to walk a lot in Vegas, but you don't have to walk so far to get to some of the main premier casinos and pools and buffets. That's enough about Vegas. All right. My last favorite in reflecting about SHRM before we take a break, and then I'm going to talk to you after the break about conferences in general that you might be preparing for, is, is really about Miss Janet Jackson. Man, Miss Janet Jackson. Miss Jackson, if you're nasty, which I love her. She's an entertainer like no other. She's been around for decades and decades. Janet is 56 years old, and she put on a concert like the boss that she is. So one thing about SHRM, and maybe even some other big conferences, when they draw such a large audience, 25,000 people, they will find an artist, a headlining artist that may be on tour, and they book them to do their show or a very similar show with their conference attendees. And I was so excited to hear that Janet was the performer. I saw Janet on my first date with my now husband. He got us tickets when we were actually in college at the time. He won tickets. He beat his roommate in some kind of game and won these 2 tickets. And so we went to Janet Jackson at the Greensboro Coliseum, September 2001. So I'm totally dating myself. I'm fine with it. And we saw Janet Jackson. That was our first date. The Velvet Rope Tour. She was amazing. She did all the songs, Come Away With Me, all that. She just did it all. It was great. And when I was listening to her in Vegas, yes, she is older. And yes, she is still just as talented. What I loved most about Janet, as someone who is I'm in my 40s, and while I enjoy seeing young, pretty hot girls in a little bit of clothes, I also recognize that season, as your body changes, as you go through premenopause, menopause, as you have babies, as a female, as your body just changes, as gravity takes over, as you lift weights, eat differently, all of that, is that she was still just as feminine. She was still just as sexual and sensual with all of her clothes on. All of them. She was talented. She was dancing. She was singing. She was all up on these young, hot dancer guys that she had in her troupe. She put on a great show, and she was fully clothed. Now, I'm not going to take away from anybody out there in their artistry who feels like that's not what they want to do or that's not who they are in any way, shape, or form. If you got a great body and you want to show it off, that's up to you. Your thing. What I am saying is I could appreciate the shift that happens in womanhood and how commanding she was, fully in her own skin, with the outfits on that she felt comfortable in, doing her thing. And that is something that I celebrate, that I will reflect on probably for as long as I think about this amazing 4-day experience that I had at the conference with so many other people, was looking on the stage and seeing, one, again, decades of talent that has persisted, that has been consistent, that is sustained through so many ups and downs and just life, to be able to come on stage and do her thing the way she wanted to do it. Her own terms, I would say. And that is something that I continue to strive for and aspire to and ask for and demand at times, is these are my terms. And that's something that if you're listening and you're trying to figure out, how do I do that? Maybe take a page from Janet. Maybe sit down and reflect on what is it that you really want. I said it earlier when it came to even being a speaker and deciding what you want out of the event that you're going to speak for or at or with, or depending on how you say that, or what you're thinking about it. It may be that some people go and they speak at a conference and that's it. Some people go and they speak for someone specifically. Some people go and they are speaking with other speakers. So even thinking about that, thinking about as a performer, what do I want out of it? That's what I felt like Janet was saying. I don't want anything from you all just to enjoy the longevity of music. She played a variety. She played old school. She played new school. She even had a video up from her video with her brother, Michael Jackson, Scream, their song together. It was amazing. It was celebrating her life. It was pictures, so many pictures they flashed of her from all the ages and stages of her career, from when she was really young to when she was, at one point, Janet was showing a lot of skin and doing a lot of things, to who she is now. The evolution of a woman was really what I got out of her performance. And that's a part of the SHRM conference that I really enjoyed, was seeing her do her thing and me dancing and remembering songs I haven't thought about in a long time, and being with 25,000 other people, 20,000 people, however many people were there. It was a lot of people, lots of lights and bass, and I had a headache by the time it was over, and it was worth it. It was worth it. There was a lot of traffic. That's a low light of this conference, I gotta say. Ooh, Vegas traffic is like no other. So you have to navigate that. I did. It was fine. We ended up taking a lot of taxis and Ubers. which is a good thing. Vegas is also getting prepared for Formula One street racing that is coming to the city in just a few months. So if you happen to be on the West Coast, if you enjoy Vegas, the city, or if you are into racing, I would say check it out. I would also say that another thing that I thought about with this conference was the perspective around size. And I wanted to share this with you all because it was such an eye-opening experience for me as I was talking to several different people that live in Vegas, that work on the Strip, or that work for hotels and casinos. And I was saying, yeah, I'm here for the SHRM conference. There's going to be about 25,000 people that registered. And they said, oh, that's a small conference. And I was like, what? I said, yeah, it gave me such great perspective. 25,000 people, that's a small conference. We're used to 200, 250, 500,000, like 500,000 people is one of their largest conferences at the convention center. The Las Vegas Convention Center has actually 4 different wings, a north, south, east, and west wing. And each wing has multiple conference rooms, multiple big venues, and small breakout rooms. So they're equipped for 100,000 plus people at a conference. It's a blip to them. And that perspective is the last thing I wanted to share with you on this show. And then we'll talk next time, because I really want to do it justice about when you attend conferences and your expectations and being in the seat for yourself. So you'll have to tune in another week for that. However, let me just tell you a little bit more about this size perspective and why it's so important. Because what I realized was I was like, this is a big conference. That's what I'd been saying. This is a big conference. And it is a big conference. It isn't small, but it's not huge. It's not. And to some people, depending on their perspective, it's small to them. They're like, actually, it's not that big of a conference. And I recognized when I was walking through the city as I was touring and going to some of my favorite eateries, et cetera, is that in the span of the city, it was small. It was great that it was there, and there were definitely lots of signage. They did a great job with advertising, and Vegas welcomes the SHRM professionals. They did all of that really, really well in such excellence. However, it was a blip in terms of everything else that was happening in the city, on the Strip, off the Strip. There were lots of people that had never heard of SHRM. They didn't know about the conference. They didn't know that it was happening, and they were in the same city. I'm sharing this with you because perhaps you're like, why don't people know about this? They don't know about it because it's not in their purview. It's not a part of their daily life. It isn't front and center for them. And you having a different perspective is something to think about. It's one of the things that I am taking from this conference. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this particular show, to share with you my excitement for being at the conference, what I learned, some of the experiences I have. And I want you to direct message me, DM me on IG, as I said, at Giver of Awesomeness. Reach out to me on LinkedIn or Facebook as Roshana Price and ask me questions about it, or get on my calendar. You can click the link and grab some time using my Calendly link to get some time with me, and we can talk about it, because perspective really matters. I've shifted my perspective on what big is, what large is, what grand is, because the more exposure I have, the more people I meet, the more I understand that what I think I know, I don't know. What I think is a certain size, whatever that word is you use, large, big, grand, a lot. These are all different sizes or could be sizes. To somebody else is small, insignificant, not at all, or it could be huge, gigantic. And so until you understand other people's perspective, and really first your own perspective, it's really hard to say what is a lot and what is a little, what is big, what is small, what is grand and epic, and what is a blip, a dash, a pinch. And so I want to leave you with that today as you think about your next event that you're attending, be it a conference, a family reunion, even a dinner party, a house party, a graduation, a convocation, whatever that is for you. When you walk into the room or as you're preparing for it, think about how you're sizing up the room or sizing up who's going to be there and all of that. And give yourself some perspective and permission to be aware and to learn something new or different, or to be in a space that is less familiar than normal, but still necessary, because that is where you grow. Or I find, at least I can speak for myself, that's where I grow. That's where my perspective shifts. And what I find also is that when I shift my perspective, those that are attached to me, those that are doing life with me, they're in my family directly, they're part of my team in my business, or they're on my coaching team, they are consultants that I work with, etc. As I shift, they shift. As we elevate, as I elevate, they elevate. We elevate together. And just like when you climb a ladder, your perspective on where you are changes. It's like, yeah, that's not so high. And then you get to the third, fourth, fifth rung, you're like, ooh, I'm getting a little high. Perspective. It shifts. And that is where growth is. So I'm going to leave you in your growth today. I want you to tune in next week, in the next couple of weeks, as I talk about conferences, as I bring you a show live from the State of Black Learning Conference in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, as I continue to help you discover, guard, and give your awesomeness. This is why this show is here. This is my life mission and work. And so if you have awesomeness to give to the world, be it in product and service and an idea in anything, I want you to reach out. Again, direct message me at Giver of Awesomeness on IG, or you can reach out to me on Facebook or LinkedIn as Roshana Price. I want to hear from you. If you've got show ideas, questions, DM me, send me a message. Let me know. I'm happy to answer them for you. Until next week, continue to be blessed. Always remember, awesomeness is in you.
Roshana Price, the giver of awesomeness. Awesomeness is in you. Erie Success is proud to sponsor the Awesomeness in Action radio show and supports the local community with workshops and professional development services. To learn more, go to eriesuccess.com and connect with a team member today. Visit eriesuccess.com. That's EYRIE success.com, and get the support you need.